So anyways, my hot take is around 990s, which before I give it, can you give people an understanding of what 990s are?
Yeah, so in the 501c3 space, charitable organizations are required to fill out and submit to the IRS a 990. It's basically an accounting and tax record of how funds have been used and how it's allocated and things like that. Churches in America have a particular, provision where they don't have to actually submit a 990.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of the wild, wild west out there for churches.
Do you know why that is? Why did that provision happen to begin with?
That's interesting. So this country was founded as a Christian nation on Christian values, and the local church has been a part of this nation's history since the beginning. Maybe it has to do with that. I actually don't know the origin story of why that is, but yeah, that's what it is.
Okay. Yeah, so honestly, the context for this is that my heart is so broken for all of these churches that are just crumbling when it comes to a lack of accountability.
Right.
And so
it's actually the number one reason for church failure, right? It's actually not moral failure.
Yeah.
It's a failure of finances.
Yeah. And Seth Godin has this brilliant term that he calls putting yourself on the hook.
Oh.
And I think the same method could, dare I say, should be applied in a church context. Is just because you don't have to submit a 990, why not put yourself on the hook and put transparency, be front-footed in your transparency in how much money's coming in, how much money's going out, where it's going, and who it's going to.
I'll take it one step further. Get your financials audited, even though you don't have to.
What does that process look like?
Yeah, so it actually is kind of an investment. It'll take like $15,000 to $20,000 to have fully audited financial books from an outside accounting firm, where they will go through all of your accounting practices and your processes, and they basically write a letter saying, hey, we've audited this organization. They handle their finances through GAAP standards, which basically is the generally acceptable accounting practices. And so ultimately what an audit is to bless the financials, saying, hey, what's represented in here is what is true.
Okay.
It's not, false or misinformation.
Yeah.
And so that's what an audit is. If you don't have the 15 to 20K to invest into it, even though I think it's worth it because you're being front-footed, you're being proactive, and that breeds trust, then you can do what's called a financial review, which is much cheaper. It's a magnitude cheaper. It's maybe a couple $1,000s. You can hire an outside accounting firm. So they don't do the full gamut of what an audit would entail, but the financial review process is better than nothing, right?
Okay.
And you did do the work of getting an outside accounting firm to look under the hood of your financials. There's also an organization called ECFA, the Evangelical Christian Financial Accounting Board, which is probably one of the highest standards that certain churches in America, to the tunes of thousands of churches at this point, adhere to. Again, these are all proactive measures.
Yeah.
If you listen to this as a church, will you get in trouble that you don't do any of these things? No. But maybe we should look from a perspective of not, okay, what's the bare minimum I can do?
Right.
But hey, where can I be proactive where it's going to breed trust in my organization? And actually, submitting yourself to things like an audit will actually make you better.
Right.
So most of the time, it's not that, most of the time, literally, pastors, CFOs of churches, there's actually no ill intent. I mean, sometimes there is, but I would say that's the minority, not the majority.
Yeah.
Most of the time, there's no ill intent, but there might be ignorance.
Yeah.
And that's not to throw shade or shame. You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And a lot of times when you're a church plant, you're just starting out, maybe you're just a few years in, you don't have MBAs on your staff yet.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that, churches shouldn't have those type of people. We should hire top talent.
Yeah.
But if you don't have those type of people yet, you don't know what you don't know. So submit yourself to wise counsel, to outside counsel in the area of finances. Go above and beyond. It'll make you better, and it'll make your organization more trustworthy.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. And I think the deeper principle is, how you've heard messages before where they're like, if God put on the screen up in front of us everything that you've ever done,
Oh,
what
that's
would you
freaky.
think? You know, like you've heard examples like that before where it's like
Right,
to
right.
scare you into like, are you living a biblical lifestyle?
Yeah.
Well,
those when the altar calls are really big.
exactly.
If you got hit by a bus tomorrow.
Yeah. But I mean, the concept is the same is if you're listening to this and you're like, well, I don't really want everyone to know. Well, maybe that's the first telltale sign that you should get on this because that is how you set yourself up for success in your stewardship.
Right.
And that's what all this is about is stewardship. Is everyone going to read the financial, what's that thing at the end of the year? The annual report, right? The financial annual report?
Sure.
Maybe not. But the fact that you are willing to put it out there and say, hey, we know that this means a lot to a lot of people and we want to show you where it is, then I think that really would behoove the organization. And that's another way to build trust.